Welcome to the Mike White Podcast, where I, Mike White, share my conversations and book reviews through my journey to learn all that goes on in this amazing world. Buckle up and enjoy the ride.
All right, and we're back on the Mike White Podcast this week with an Air Force captain, Collin Charles. We were high school classmates back in the day at Frisco Heritage, and it's been like 10 years since I've got to catch up with Collin. So I'm really excited about this episode to share his story because he's out doing amazing things. Already done a ton of crazy stuff. Like in high school, he was powerlifting state champ, and now he's really into CrossFit. So I'm excited to hear his story and see what he's up to. How's it going, Collin?
Oh, it's going great. Can I still call you MJ, or do we just go by Mike now?
You can call me MJ. My reason for going by Mike kind of backfired. I guess still is fine. I just think Mike's easy to say, and everyone would like have to like do a double take when they heard my name was MJ, and so I just got tired. I was like, keep it simple. I'll just go by Mike. But you know, all my family still calls me MJ, and everyone from high school knows me as MJ. So that's totally cool.
Some things stick and some things don't, right? I knew back in the day when we were in high school, it's like, this man's going places for sure. It's cool to be able to reconnect 10 years out, still be like, hey man, didn't miss a beat.
I know. So I mean, I think we just got to start from the beginning because I mean, you're an Air Force captain now, but want to show people how you got to that point and what you've learned along the way. So are you originally from Frisco?
I'm actually not. So I grew up most of my life in Frisco, yes. Was born in Atlanta, Georgia, ended up in Flint, Michigan, and then kind of stumbled down to Frisco just because parents were working at the time. Until we graduated high school back in 2013.
Yeah.
After that, I went to Colorado Springs to the United States Air Force Academy prep school. Was there for a year and then did 4 years at the Air Force Academy.
All right, hold on. We gotta dive into high school now. All right, we got a lot to talk about there because you were a freaking stud there, looking like a man among boys, just like a total Adonis. So, like, when did you start lifting weights? Because you were the powerlifting state champ there at the end of your senior year. Did you do it? Did you win multiple years or just your senior year?
No, I went in 11th grade. So yeah, I went to state and lost. I got 4th in 11th grade, and then I went back, changed weight classes senior year, and then won it in the higher weight class senior year.
Wow, nice.
How did that start? I started lifting weights actually. I have two memories of fitness. Really, one was when I was about 7 years old, and I was trying to do push-ups in a of all things, a Hapkido class. Right, Hapkido was a Korean martial art form, and my dad, who was in the army, saw us doing push-ups there and said, "Son, that is terrible. Go downstairs and do push-ups." We held the push-up position, I don't know, maybe for like 15 minutes as a 7-year-old.
Wow.
And I was sore forever after that. Fast forward to 7th grade. My dad, same guy, love him to death, knows my motivations. And he has gotten me to do darn near anything you can imagine with this very phrase, right? He'll say, "Son, you like girls, don't you?" Like, girls like guys with muscles. Go do some push-ups. And that day I started doing push-ups. I kid you not. And I would do 300 a day in the 7th grade until eventually that progressed to a point where I was just really strong. So I was really obsessing over women the entire time.
Hey, I mean, it's good motivation. But I met you in freshman year, so 9th grade, and you were already jacked. And you had a brother that was really strong too, JM.
Yeah.
Did he go through the same regimen as your dad? Was he like a pretty disciplinarian growing up?
John Michael is a disciplinarian in a different way, right? So he's academically smart. I'm the kind of the meathead of the two of us. So, he actually ended up he went to Washington University and then ended up going to like pharmacy school, top 10% of pharmacists in the country. And now he's working as a pharmacist. So he's an academic type. Love him to death. Couldn't take him, like, when it comes to books, he's got me beat. However, when it comes to muscles, I have the lion's share. So,
But he was powerlifting there with you too, right? Did you guys have some like friendly competition to try to see who's stronger?
man, I'm not sure if you didn't see this, but we used to fight in the locker room, he and I.
No, I never saw that.
We would go at it, and then that fight would end up going back to the house, and we would go back and forth. Um,
That's crazy because you guys are both like the most kind people in high school. Like everyone was friends with you guys. Like I don't know if you ever had a bad day type thing. Like if you did, you never noticed. No one else ever noticed it because you just always had that kind of positive attitude.
well,
I,
thank you.
I don't know. Do you attribute that to anything like how you were raised or?
I think so. My parents were very they taught us that you and your brothers, right? Because there's a little brother as well who was a freshman when we graduated.
Mhm.
Um, you and your brothers are going to be the best thing for each other, and you should know that no matter what, family will be there for you, for better or for worse. So you probably should try to make it better. And that ended up becoming a really competitive rivalry, which is good, in some ways, but it definitely not kept us humble. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. And
Um,
did you always have the vision of wanting to win state in powerlifting? Was that a goal?
no, it wasn't. It wasn't at all. Um, and we can get into this a little bit more later, but when I was younger, 8, 9, 10 years old, I actually wanted to be fast. I didn't really care to be strong so much. I remember the 2008 Olympics watching Usain Bolt run across that line and break
Yeah.
the speed the world record, and I had decided at that exact point I was going to do anything to be there. So for some reason, I decided it would be best for me to give up ice cream and soda and just train. And that's what I did. So I was eighth grade. I gave up ice cream and soda and just started running. And I would run forever and forever and forever. I think naturally, thanks to my mom, because my mom is outrageously strong for no reason. Um, we all got strong genes, but even now, the way I train is it's almost exclusively cardio. I triple down on cardio if I get the chance every time.
So you kind of just realize like, hey, I'm actually pretty strong just naturally, and you already have the discipline of training, and it was kind of a natural fit because you also played football as well, right?
Yeah. Running back and fullback. And then Joe Michael was defense. So there goes that rivalry again.
Yeah. Well, practices I'm sure were fun.
Oh, yeah.
But what was your training regimen outside of before, especially before
Mm.
you're in a structured environment? It sounded like you already were training. So like what kind of things would you do?
So when I was like high school era, I actually ran cross country during the summers.
I
When I
remember
was,
that. Yeah.
yeah, hop in with the cross country team. We'd run, 5, 6 miles a day and then come back and do the weightlifting with the football team, which is, a clear predecessor to CrossFit. But what I didn't know at the time is that, we can train particularly running distance, and you'll use your oxidative energy system. But there are different energy systems that come into play as well. I believe I always get this one wrong. Glycolic and phosphogenic, right? Your sprints and your middle distance that need to be trained as well. Um, but because I ran so much, I was always training slow twitch muscles, which actually translated really well to powerlifting because we're also using slow twitch muscles. However, when you're playing football, it's actually better to train your fast twitch muscles. And I ignored those until much later into my fitness career.
Yeah. So, because I remember running the summer runs with you, and you were just a beast because you would finish, and we'd all be done, just kind of like glad to be finished with the run, and you're over there like cranking out some push-ups at the end, like you just wouldn't stop training. So I think even if you didn't work those fast twitch muscles, you had such like a drive and that discipline to train every day that you still had a ton of success. And I don't know, it's just awesome to see. You definitely led the pack and gave people something to look up to and see what you can really do when you put your mind to it.
For sure. I was actually just trying to be a superhero. And to some degree, still am, right? Captain America or, Black Panther or whatever. But it's always going to be the guy that goes a little bit further that's going to be able to do a little bit more. And
Yeah.
that actually translated really well into being into a military context later. But hey, I always wanted to be Steve Rogers. I'm not gonna lie about it.
And I just want to give a shout out. Let me know if these are wrong, but based on the internet of the state powerlifting stuff, you had your squat was 625, your bench was 390, and your deadlift was 650. So that was 1,665 pounds. Is that your max?
It was at the time, yes.
You got even stronger after that, or you kind of leveled off?
um, I kind of leveled off in some ways. Now, when I was doing that, you have a squat suit, you have a bench shirt, and all of those things. And after I left high school, I just didn't go back to that at all. So I got up to a point where I was squatting 500. I got up to 540. That was just raw. And then 370 at one point until I started dislocating a shoulder, which is what ultimately started getting me on the path of the breathe program. And then deadlift, I think I got back up to about 625. And all of that
Jeez.
was raw.
So
Um,
what kind of injuries did you have along the way, and how did you deal with them in high school there to eventually, be at the
that
top of the top?
I have two injuries that I will get like clockwork. One is a groin injury. Naturally, I'm not going to demonstrate for that for you right now, but my hip adductor wouldn't tighten up and just lock, essentially. And then this part of my shoulder right here, where the shoulder meets the pectoral,
Yeah.
and that was from doing bench press all the time. And much like how we do in our day-to-day life, and when I train my clients on the Breathe program now, I usually target those two areas because they're the way that we live life in America lends itself to injuring those two places, right? Because you're always sitting, so your hamstrings are tight, your adductors are tight, and then you go lift, and that groin essentially either stretches, strains, or dislocates because you haven't stretched and warmed up the area before you're doing heavy lifts. When we're doing things like we're sitting at a computer, we're driving a car, we're looking at our phone, there's a tendency for our bodies to essentially concave, right? And our thoracic spine, which is the top half of your spine, caves in and makes everything short between your shoulders, your pecs, and all the way across. So when you're short and you're like just crunched in on yourself and you do a bench press, it'll take that shoulder joint and dislocate it forward just enough to where you're going to get chronic pain in that shoulder. That happens
Jeez.
all the time when I was doing CrossFit coaching. That was what everybody would get. Like, oh, my shoulder hurts. Oh, my shoulder hurts. It's actually really easy to fix. Um,
So
through
what is that solution, the Breathe program that you talk about? What would you
oh,
recommend?
the Breathe program itself is 6 parts of fitness, right? Overall health, which is diet, exercise, sleep, sunlight, laughter, and relationships, right? Which all contribute to a person's overall health, physically, mentally, and emotionally. And it ties how does your relationships that you've had contribute to how you're showing up in the gym? Because there is a tie.
Hmm.
If you're not getting enough sleep, why aren't you getting enough sleep? Can we use laughter to lower the adrenaline and cortisol levels in your body so you can get better sleep? So then that translates to how you show up in the gym or how you show up in your day-to-day life. Um, the way that we do life for the most part, again, is it's tight, it's forward, it's not well-rounded at all. And because it's not well-rounded, we are giving ourselves over to not only poor movement, but also chronic like illnesses. Oh,
Yeah. And I just watched, have you seen the Arnold Schwarzenegger documentary?
no.
Oh, they
Is it
just,
called?
yeah, it just got released probably this last month on Netflix.
Nice.
But one thing I took from it was he was talking about his early days of training in Austria there. And it was just a group of young guys just getting together on the river, training and having fun, and the camaraderie aspect of it was huge in just his overall well-being. And that's something that I think a lot of people are missing today. But that program you talk about, that's like a key tenet, that the relationships as well.
Mm-hmm. That's something that's so incredible about, the human experience, where I did CrossFit coaching for the last year and a half or so. And you can see a marked difference, and actually the speed of where people will not only will perform better, but also lose weight and get into shape. It happens faster in CrossFit than any other style of fitness. And what I attribute that to is not so much the type of workouts you're doing, though that is important. It's the fact that every time you show up and you look to the person to your left, you see that same person over and over again. So that accountability through relationship translates to healthier living.
Definitely. When did you get into CrossFit?
So I got into CrossFit in the middle of the pandemic because, California locked down hard.
Yeah.
There was, at the time I was living at a place and there were several gyms around, mostly like combat gyms, martial arts. But there was this one CrossFit gym and I was walking and I made eye contact with the owner. And he's like, "Hey, you want to work out?" Yeah, absolutely. Came in and I was at that gym for a couple years. I ended up leaving in December this last year, but that started everything. Actually, that's not totally true because we had a coach in high school, Coach Shea Hendricks, who went to school with a guy named Rich Froning. And Rich Froning was the fittest man in the world like 6 or 7 years in a row, just winning the CrossFit games. And really, Coach Hendricks is the one who planted the seed, like, "Hey, you need to go do CrossFit because you're doing all things."
Isn't Coach Hendricks from like Sweetwater in the middle of nowhere, Texas? No?
He's not from Sweetwater. There was a Coach Jackson that was from Sweetwater.
Okay, that's what I'm thinking.
He was from somewhere in, I'm not totally sure where Coach Hendricks was from, but I know he went to school with Coach Hicks and Coach Laster. They all went to the same school.
And is that guy, what's his relation with CrossFit? Is he like one of the OGs?
Rich Froning?
Yeah.
Rich Froning is like, he may be the GOAT.
The GOAT.
Yeah. He's a couple years behind now, but he's still competing. Like, I believe he's like late 30s, early 40s, somewhere in there. But he competes at the top levels of CrossFit every year. Still.
And he was there in California?
No, he was to high school with our coaches in high school.
Oh, but how'd you come across him? Or like, did you?
Never actually got to meet him. But because Coach Hendricks knew him, he was like, "Hey, you work like him. You should go do what he did." And I was like, "Thanks, Coach. That'd be awesome. But you know what? I'm gonna do me because, hey, character flaw. I'm not gonna even try to deny this. I don't like people telling me what to do." So I was like, "Thanks for the advice, Coach. I'm gonna go do my own thing," and I did. Looking back now, if I had listened to Coach Hendricks and went to do CrossFit full time, I would definitely be at the games because now I do know people who compete at the games. And I was at a competition 3 weeks ago supporting this guy named, what's his name? Nick Matthew, who's a friend of mine who went to the CrossFit games last year and got 14th.
Wow.
And there's no difference between him and me except for he's trained longer.
Yeah. So, but you got the bug enough to where you wanted to be certified as a coach as well?
Absolutely. That actually was more of an act of service than it was of I really want to coach. I love coaching and I love supporting the gym. However, I just kept seeing people get hurt all the time.
Yeah.
And when I showed up in CrossFit, I was as rigid as like a slab of concrete. I could not move at all. And what I learned is that by regularly stretching and working through mobility, right? How far can you move your shoulder back? How deep in the squat can you get? Those are the things that actually prevent the injuries and help you move well, right? My hips were so tight, man, you couldn't stick a needle through them. Super tight.
Yeah.
But now I can open up, drop down into that squat. And as a result, right? My squat took a little bit of a hit, so to speak, right? I'm not squatting 500 pounds anymore. However, instead of cleaning 225, now I can clean like 295 because I was able to move appropriately through that hip movement.
How can so if anyone's out there going to a CrossFit gym, how can they tell if the coaches there actually do care about the mobility aspect and not just fling around a ton of weight?
If they're like anything like the gyms that I've been to, they probably don't care about mobility, right? Because when you're running a gym, particularly, it's a business and you have to do the business aspects of it. So you give the people what they want. Like if people wanted to have really good mobility, they wanted to do things like that, they're probably going to go to a yoga place as opposed to somewhere where, hey, you're going to make me fit. I'm going to have cardio. I'm going to be strong. Then they go to CrossFit, but then the coaches don't necessarily push mobility because the people aren't looking for mobility. But the gyms that are competitive, they will force their people to stretch daily, do mobility.
Yeah.
So the best way to answer your question, the best way to find out if the coach cares, ask how competitive the gym is. If the gym is really competitive, they'll get you into a good mobility routine as well.
True pros.
Yes.
Do you cross train at all? Like, I mean, CrossFit is cross training, but do you do like yoga or like the typical bodybuilding exercises like you used to?
I actually stay away from the typical bodybuilding exercises now, not for any particular reason. Um, Part of me is like, hey, I don't feel like I necessarily want 500 pounds on my back, but and so instead of doing back squats, I'll do front squats for days, right? And overhead squats. Overhead squats have become my probably go-to squat because it forces you to have that mobility through your spine, in your shoulders, in your lats, and in your hips. So especially now that I'm really in a cardio cycle, right? So I'll do 2 parts cardio for every 1 part of weightlifting now. So what I try to do is when I'm doing my weightlifting, I want to do as many compound movements as I can while getting as much mobility as I can.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And front squat, is that because it engages the core more? Is that why you like it better than back squat?
That's a large part of it. So the way that back squatting works is it definitely puts a lot of weight on your low back and your quads and hips. But it also pushes you forward. So you're into a
Mm-hmm.
bit of a hinge position in order to keep the bar over your center of gravity. As opposed to a front squat, your bar is actually going to be a little bit more naturally under your line of gravity, just straight. So what it actually forces you to do is sit up more upright while you're squatting and forces your knees more over your toes and your hips further apart in order to be able to do the squat well. And that translates better to a clean, right? So I'm trying to get my clean right. Because when I do
Yeah.
CrossFit competitions, no one's ever going to do a heavy back squat, but you can guarantee there'll be a heavy clean or a heavy snatch in there.
And when you're doing like the cling, you're gonna have your elbows out, your hands. It's almost like your thumbs are on your shoulders. I remember back in the day that in high school they would teach front squat where you would do like an X with your arms and go opposite hand, opposite shoulder, and hold the
Mhm.
bar like that. Is one way better than the other?
Depends on your goals. So if you're a person who doesn't do mobility, right, that the cross chest it makes up for the lack of flexibility in the lats because you can't get the elbows up in the same way that you would if you were doing a clean, right? But no one in the history of cleaning has ever successfully got a clean, threw it in the air, caught it on the front rack, and slapped their hands down in order to catch it. If they did, we would all be terrified watching it happen.
Yeah,
Um,
crush your collarbone. I would feel like.
we would. Like, I'm not trying to do all that. I like breathing.
Yeah.
So, I'm pretty sure you've had your fair share of collarbone injuries, though. um, but when you do a clean and you get up, you have to get your hands underneath it into that forward rack position. And you can make up for that with distances and mostly lat mobility. But it's almost imperative that you do it the front rack way as opposed to the cross.
Well, that's good to know because the way you just had your elbow up too, I realized I am not mobile because when I try to do front squat, my elbows do not get that high. So that's something I need to work on.
Mm. It's something you could do, and here's a really kind of easy hack, but also not easy because you have to have the equipment for it. There are these rubber bands. They're giant, like exercise rubber bands.
Yeah.
What you could do is just take a rubber band, step on one end of it, pull it around so it's stretching your lat this way. You'll feel it in your tricep, but it is opening that lat up all the way.
So pull
And
your arm behind you and you're holding the rubber band down with your foot.
yes,
Okay.
that's the best stretch you can do to open up the lat, or one of the very good stretches you can do. Um,
Because
because, good.
you guys just crank out pull-ups too, which I'm sure would make your lats pretty tight.
Yes, the CrossFit pull-up, the infamous CrossFit pull-up. Um, that actually, I was having a discussion about this just the other day. Is people don't give credit to the CrossFit pull-up.
Well, it's not a real pull-up, but
It is.
it's something else. It's totally, you can't call that a pull-up. That's like kip. I don't know.
It is. So there's actually 3 pull-ups in CrossFit, right? The strict one, which is the one that we think about, and has its own kind of characteristic, because when we're doing a strict or like a military pull-up, you extend your arm, but when you're doing that, you're relaxed. You're not holding any tension while your lat is in extension. And then when you pull up, you're holding that lat is now in flexion, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we take all of our strength in a strict pull-up sense. But when you're doing the CrossFit kipping pull-up, you're actually having a positive effect on at the top when your lat is in extension, and by swinging through, you're also engaging all of your muscles while it's in flexion. So you're doing flexion and extension, strength here and strength there. And that's what the difference is. So a CrossFit pull-up, you're actually working the muscle in both flexion and extension as opposed to just in flexion.
Well, that's good to know that there's some science behind it because I just thought they were wanting to get more pull-ups in faster.
And little column A, little column B.
So CrossFit overall, if someone is not active, they want to start a training regimen, what would be your pitch to why they should go and join a CrossFit gym?
Okay. First off, CrossFit allows a person to be able to begin at the speed that they are ready. For instance, I wouldn't advise anybody to get off the couch and then go run a marathon, right? You need that incremental growth to say, hey, we're here. We'll start you off in the CrossFit world, they say, at the scaled version. And then eventually you work up to the prescribed workout and further. So step by step, you'll be able to move at your own pace. And it's more holistic than any one style of working out is. So you get your 3 energy systems, you'll get your explosive work, you'll get your strength work, and you'll get your balance. So you'll be a better, holistically rounded athlete in CrossFit. And don't get hurt. That's if you do get hurt, it's probably because you didn't stretch well enough, you didn't warm up well enough, or you tried to do something that you shouldn't have been doing. But if you have a good coach, they'll prevent that from happening. 10 for 10.
I definitely, you got me sold. I need to try it because I just like the overall mobility and strength, and then the community aspect as well. That's something I don't get, where a lot of times I'm just working out solo, and I'm sure if I had someone beside me, I'd probably push myself a little bit harder. So that's good.
It's a lot of fun being able to see yourself and everybody else go through the worst thing every day. There are no secrets at that point. You know, like, I've seen you uglier. That's fine.
Yeah, everyone's just dripping in sweat. That's great.
Yeah.
So, talking about training, I wanted to ask you: did you play with Kane when we were in high school? Kane Nwangu?
Yes. Oh,
So
man. Not for long, though.
it's crazy. I was wondering because he's gone the farthest, I think, in football from the people we were in high school with, and he's out there with the Minnesota Vikings, like returning kicks for touchdowns, which is crazy to see. So I was wondering if you if you ever noticed him like working out in the gym, or if you could tell that, yeah, this guy was going to play in the NFL.
I want to say Kane, because Kane had an older brother, and his name slips me.
Emeka, yeah,
Emeka.
he was a beast too.
He was. I want to say Emeka was a year or two younger than us. And then
Yeah, yes, and Kane was even younger.
right. So
So
I don't think we were there at the same time, but he was there when my younger brother was there.
oh no, he was there when we were there. You just
Really?
yeah. So I'm thinking you were ahead of him in the running back lineup. So you were ahead of a NFL running back in high school. It's kind of cool.
Like, no credit to me. Goodness gracious, that man is he's a dangerous player in the best of ways. But he also works hard in a lot of ways too, and it shows off. Minnesota Vikings running that touchdowns back. That is absolutely incredible.
I know. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's fun to watch. So I think people even on Twitter, like I'm scrolling through Twitter, and they're like trying to get him on the All-Star Pro Bowl team because he had like 2 kick returns that first year. He was a returner, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
But
Check him
so
out.
yeah, so you're there in high school dominating powerlifting, and then you decide you want to go to the Air Force Academy. What was going through your mind there?
Man, I will honor my father on that one. The truth of it is, my dad wanted all 3 of us to join the military because it's a good route. You understand. Military is definitely a good route, and it's a good route to hop into when you're young.
Yeah,
Um,
it's stable. You know, you're guaranteed a good job and good experience.
right. I think so. He went to the army, and he wanted us all to go. I was the only one that was qualified because I don't have asthma. My 2 brothers do.
Wow,
So
I didn't realize that disqualified him.
they did. There's a lot of things like asthma and eczema will now get you out of the military now, which is odd
I feel like everyone has eczema.
to some degree or not, right?
Yeah,
'Cause I forgot to put on lotion one day and I got kicked out of the military.
yeah,
um, but I wanted to go, right? Because again, I always wanted to be Steve Rogers, right? And that's a great way to do it. Go to the military, see the world a little bit, do some things. Um, and it's something my dad wanted for all of us. And, he's my dad. And I hold my dad in such a high esteem that if he was to say, go jump out the window, I would just assume that there's a cushion at the bottom. It's kind of one of those things. Uh, we went to the Air Force Academy 2013 and went through basic training twice.
Wait,
Which,
so
yeah,
so were you set on the Air Force, or did you apply to West Point and Annapolis as well?
no, I applied to 2 schools. I applied to the United States Air Force Academy and Baylor down in Waco. Um,
That was your
and
backup.
that was my backup. And I was going to go, originally the plan was to go to ROTC in Waco and then become a chaplain. So I wanted to be the good, holy, churchy guy, which, for better or for worse, I can't believe I'm even embarrassed to say that because my views on Christianity they've developed. Let's put it that way. That may be another podcast.
All right, I'm down to talk about religion. I usually offend people, but I'm always up to debate it.
You what? So interested now. Please put a pin in that one. We'll double back to that.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, so that was the plan to go there and do that. And essentially, if you know, Waco or Baylor is crazy expensive.
hmm
At the time, it was something like $50,000 a semester. So I was looking for all sorts of different, scholarships, and I ended up in an interview for a scholarship through a fraternity called Omega Sci-Fi. And went in there. It was probably one of the best interviews of my life. And they had asked if I had applied to other schools than Baylor. I said, yes, I did. I actually wanted to go to the Air Force Academy, and I just found out that I didn't get the appointment. And one of the guys on the board happened to be, of all things, a minority recruiter for the Air Force Academy.
Wow.
Yeah. So he essentially made a couple calls me back, and he's like, hey, listen, we got you a spot at the prep school. You can go, but you have to decide by Sunday. And at this point, it's Wednesday. So Sat there and thought about it for 2 days, and I was like, you know what? I have this phrase: if you're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't, you might as well do. So threw my hat in there and went to the academy.
That's
After that.
awesome. Did you have to do the whole like coordinate with a representative to get a letter and all that?
I did. So
So
the
what,
way that go ahead.
yeah, what's that process like?
So when you're in high school, everybody has to get essentially a letter of recommendation from your senator or congressman, unless you're in the military already, in which case you can get a presidential recommendation or vice presidential. But you don't have to do that in order to go to the prep school. And that's why I ended up going to the prep school instead. So
Ah,
I went to the prep school, and then once you're in the prep school, they see that you've already served, they see that you want to commit to this, and they open up the doors to make it significantly easier to get that recommendation. So just went to the Air Force Academy, and I'll tell you what, I wanted to leave so bad that I applied to like 10 colleges the day we got our computers out of basic. And I was like, you know what, I'm gonna stick it out for a little bit. Ended up really loving it. Got the recommendation, went up to the Air Force Academy, and that was actually some of the best time I've had. Was just
so
going to the academy.
in the prep school, I've kind of saw the Navy's version of it next to officer candidate school. They have the naval version of it right there, and they had it worse than us. I thought it was shorter, but gosh, it was like pure military indoctrination, getting yelled at, no freedom. What was your experience like?
Whew, the first basic at the prep school was exactly what you just said. And looking back at it, actually, there was a lot of really funny moments because the guys who trained us were legitimate. They were enlisted master sergeants. So they knew everything. They were on us left, right, and center. And it's a lot more psychological there. When we did that, made it through that basic, which was only like 2.5 weeks. Not a bad deal at all.
Where was it located?
In Colorado Springs.
Oh,
So it
okay,
was
prep
the
school too.
same campus as the Air Force Academy.
Okay,
We were there, and we started off when we started basic. We had 240 kids. I think by the time we left basic, we were down to 200, and then by after that year, we were down to I want to say 150 ish. Oh, people just drop. They drop
what
really.
is it? What is it about that first year that's so difficult?
A lot of things. I think there's the mental aspect of, hey, you're in the military, and if you've been in the military, you have to realize you're starting over as soon as you get into the academy. And that's really the process. It's this process of starting over again and again. So you start over when you enlist, you start over again when you're at the prep school, and then you're at the bottom when you're a 4 degree, and then once you at the academy. And then once you commission, you're at the bottom of the officer corps. And that really psychs a lot of people out, and that just makes you not kind of want to do it. Then the lifestyle, like you don't really leave the prep school for the most part. So you're there, you make food, whatever, and whatnot. But when you're on campus, you're on campus, and it's like that at the prep school, and it's actually worse when you're a 4 degree. But it was worth it. It was absolutely worth it. There's days where it's hard and you're by yourself, and you have what 8 tests you're all studying for because all of the tests come at the same time. And then there's times where it's just, hey, we're just living our day to day lives. That's
What
really good.
What do you think was like the most rewarding part of that experience
At the prep school or at the academy?
at the academy?
Oh man. So when I was so they call it a first degree, right? So a senior, a firstie. I was a I was actually running basic training because when you at the academy, I think they've changed it since I've been gone, but the first degree and second degree cadets train the incoming freshman class. And there's this thing called Jacks Valley, which is there's a campsite off of the academy. The academy is also 24 square miles of land. It's very big. So there's a campsite. You go down in there, and You're roughing it for like maybe 2 weeks, not super bad. But there's this thing called the assault course, which is the hardest thing most of these people have done at the time they are doing it. You have a little plastic rifle that's above your head, it's 10 pounds. You have a helmet on, mouthpiece in, and you're doing an obstacle course, except you're doing essentially you have to hold the rifle above your head the entire time. You're doing burpees the entire time. The, the course is like it's up a hill, down a hill. There's water obstacles. There are people yelling at you, 10, 15 people. They have these like I don't know what they're called, just sound grenades that are also going off the entire time. So you're hearing like just they got smoke grenades
Nice.
going up. So
It's
it's
legit.
rough to say the least. Um, it sounds actually going back to it's a lot more epic, but that's not even the hard part. The hard part is you're constantly breathing in this dust from Colorado. So, and you do all of this after you do your pugil sticks. So you're
Oh,
doing this,
where you're hitting people with like the Q-tip looking thing?
yes. So you do that, and that turns into like war. And then you go through this course. You're already tired. You're hungry. Can't breathe. It's like smoky. Someone's yelling at you, and your arms are giving out from holding this rifle up. And it takes about 2 hours to get through the course. It's hard.
Wow.
But when you come out on the other end, there's this like fire that you can see in everyone's eyes. They'll be dogged just straight to hell, honestly. But you look in their eyes and there's this look of pride, like I found my strength on that course. And that is easily the most rewarding thing.
Is
I
that
think.
like the capstone for their first year summer, or is that like the end of the first year whole experience?
That is that's the end of the basic, right? There's another thing called recognition, which I try not to talk about nowadays because they've changed recognition so intensely. When I was going through basic, I've never been at this point before, or when I was going through recognition, I had a couple people betting against me. I knew that. And they trained us so hard that I was too exhausted to sleep. I've never been in that position before. I just laid there in the bed and wait till the next day where it all begins again.
Just the adrenaline just going through your veins?
I would think so. That makes more sense. But I don't know. I was just beat. I just
So
remember, you know,
it's both physical exhaustion they put you through, and then what about like the mentally, what do you think was the most difficult?
oh man, recognition for sure. It was
Oh wow.
recognition. The year is 2015. It happens every year in about February. Um, and it's mind you, it's the freshman class versus the other three classes. So it'd be one thing when you're in it, people are yelling at you. It's another thing when three people are yelling at you, let alone the other. And I suppose every squadron has about 75 upperclassmen who are all waiting to yell at you. Man, I can't ruin the experience so much because it was amazing. It was terrifying. But you're constantly running back and forth. You forget things. You're in push-up position, and everyone's in push-up position. So now you're angry at each other. Someone's always messing up. But it's those moments, like those few rare moments in life where you're really being tried, that you find yourself to have the most like ability and power, right?
Yeah.
And that, man, I would do it again. I'm not gonna lie to you. It was a lot of fun.
What about like the people you did it with? Did that help having someone right there next to you suffering?
Absolutely. And those guys, man, the guys I went through, I would never trade my particular flight that I went through it with. Because those guys, one of them went to be a Navy SEAL. I think two of them went to go be tactical air control party officers, which is like spec ops for the Air Force. I think another one went to be a combat rescue officer and a whole crop of pilots. Like those kids, they were badass. These
Are
guys.
the tactical guys the people on the ground like telling where they need air support type stuff? Is
That's
that their
exactly
job?
what they do. When you see it in Call of Duty, they're like, light up that building, and then they drop the bombs and all that. That's what they're doing.
Wow. Yeah, that's badass.
Those guys are, my hands off to them. I'm sitting at a desk cheering them on, but they're amazing people.
How do you figure out where you go after the academy? When do you kind of choose your path?
So at the beginning of your fourth year, so your senior year, they'll have a drop list, right? So you put in the best way I could describe the way the Air Force does their matchups. It's kind of like Tinder. So you have their needs and you have your wants, and they'll list out what they need, and you list out what they want. If there's a match, then they'll say, "Hey, would you like to do pilot, or would you like to go into, logistics?" And if you accept that, then you go on to do that job, right? But it's kind of a match of the two. You find out early in your senior year what you're going to be doing for the rest of your career,
Okay.
which is good because some of these guys they'll go in and they'll get a 5-year commitment. Like, given I went to pilot training first and then left pilot training to go into acquisitions because I knew I didn't want to be a pilot. And that gives me a 5-year commitment, which is now over. And then the guys who are pilots still owe, I want to say, another 7 years of commitment.
Yeah, because it's like once they get their wings, right, then that time starts.
Starts after your training. So
Yeah.
it's
What?
usually
So
about
you did initially go to pilot training? Is that what was that for? And how was that?
I hated it. I hated everything about it. I hated the whole experience, cradle to grave. Um, I left largely because like stomach sickness, and
Oh yeah.
I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to be stuck for 10 years at the time. Um,
Yeah, that I
but
totally feel you. And they're trying to do that with submarines. They're saying, "Oh, all these guys are leaving after their first commitment. We need to make them stay for 10 years," or some of the top uh, officers are voicing that opinion. And that was a big reason I didn't try to go the pilot route. Is like, yeah, you're tied to 10 years of it. So if you don't like it, it kind of sucks. You're stuck there either way.
which I'd rather not do. Exactly. I know, of course, at this point, we're 5 years in. A lot of the people I did go to school with are still pilots, and a lot of them really don't like it. So I'm glad I made the call, got out of there. But I, what happened was when you're at the academy, it is absolutely indoctrination into you will become a pilot. If you don't want to become a pilot, we're going to convince you that you want to become a pilot. And then you just go about your day to day life, and then F-15 will like fly over the school, and you're like, yeah, that's why I want to go do this. And I bought that. I drank the big blue Kool-Aid. It went out to Del Rio, Texas to become a pilot, and I hated my existence.
Did you ever get like a solo?
I got to solo, but not in Del Rio. I got to solo in what they call IPT, which is in Pueblo, Colorado. Little single prop plane. Got to do a little. Yeah, I got to. It was fun, and I didn't die. So hey,
That's enough, right?
yeah, that's a good job in my book.
Yeah. So what did you shift to after you realized pilot wasn't the thing?
I went to. I wanted to get away from the air stuff, so I decided to go to Los Angeles Air Force Base to work on space programs as an acquisitions officer.
Nice.
Space is a big deal, right? Now,
Yeah.
given if you told somebody like I'm in the Space Force, they would look at you funny because that doesn't sound like a real thing. Uh, but it is. It very much is. And if we kind of have our act together in space to some degree. But space, what we're doing in space right now it is the backbone of everything that is going on in the world right now. And if we lose our assets in space, then we've lost everything you can imagine. There would be no more podcasts. There's no more of that. There's no more traffic lights. There's no more airplanes. There's none of that. If the space goes out, we are in trouble deep. So it's cool working on space stuff because I see how important it is.
Yeah, in today's age, everything's digital. Everything has to do with communications. And we all just take it for granted that, oh, that's, I can get internet wherever I want. It's easy. But
Right.
at the snap of a fingers, a bad actor could wipe that out if we don't protect ourselves. And no, yeah, it's super important. I, I don't know. Have you heard about, the guy, Major Jason Lowry in the Space Force?
Sounds extremely familiar.
He's writing about Bitcoin and how Bitcoin as a possible solution to like adding he has his own thesis, which I haven't read, so I shouldn't talk too much of it. But in the whole Bitcoin space, there's also thoughts of using that as some physical power of like proof of work, proof of energy to help prevent hacks and bad actors from kind of just spamming out or overtaking like key pieces of tech. I don't know. It's kind of interesting. It's all a Space Force major is using his thesis to talk about it.
I think that could potentially work, right? Because all of the Bitcoin is just a blockchain technology, and the more recent Bitcoins are the most complex um, Bitcoins that we could have. So if we were to incorporate that level of encryption through a blockchain technology to protect our space assets, that potentially could work. Caveat: those satellites that we're still using for like GPS and whatnot have been up there as long as we have been alive. So that's kind of the other side of that, right? Is now we've got all this technology that could work. However, the thing has been flying for 30 years and it's not easy to say, hey, we're gonna go up to space, grab a satellite, stitch our thing onto it, and keep it flying. That's almost an impossibility.
Yeah. No, it's super interesting to think about like what the future of warfare looks like and how we can best protect ourselves from any possible attack.
Do you think we're gonna go to war, or do you think it's gonna be like us versus AI?
Oh, I mean, no, well, I don't think AI is going to take over or anything, but I think the future of warfare will be like, like there's no reason we should ever have a war like Russia and Ukraine, like conventional warfare. I don't
Mhm.
think makes sense in the digital age, uh, but
I
we'll
mean,
see.
I don't know. I mean, you have a military background as much as I do, my man. Um, I don't know. I could see potentially. I do think, truthfully, this is going to sound wildly inappropriate. There are really only three resources that we need to protect at all costs, right? This is my opinion, right? Controversial as it may be, right? Time. You got to protect your time because you're never going to get more time. Land, because they're not making more land. Yeah, I'm not going to say the third one because like, that's where it gets super controversial.
All
But
right.
as far as things go, well, there will always be a contestant for land, right? But when we talk about digital warfare, you're not talking about anything. You potentially could remove the land aspect of it, but as long as there's people on the land, you got to get them off of your land, so to speak. Get off my yard.
Yeah. No, but I'm saying like freaking drones or like robot dogs or
Oh,
autonomous vehicles, all that kind of stuff. I would say is the future. More like the fact I don't, if I was leading the military, I would not want to risk a human life. And if I didn't have to, like if I have these drones, I could send drones in. I'm doing that every day instead of sending a human out there.
I couldn't agree with you more. That makes sense. Uh, will we get there? Will we have a day when we have a drone subs? I mean, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, with the technology and AI and stuff, I don't see why not. But who knows when that day will come? I guess that's the thing.
That's going to be the tipping point, I'm sure, when we see people, right? When we see things like AI. which I have my own opinions about as well, because we haven't been able to figure out morality enough to be able to program morality. But if you were to create something like AI and then equip it to like a predator drone, would then do you not need a pilot at all? Or would you still need the pilot there to make that call? No.
No, definitely. I mean, like you said, it's hard. It's hard to even program the rules for humans for like our what is it? The rules of engagement. Like that in itself has enough scrutiny, and then to implement that into a computer, yeah, that'd be I think we're years away, but it's definitely a possibility.
Ideally. I'm like, I thought we were years away last year.
Yeah, that's true.
What is the world going to look like when we finally allow AI to do the job of taking another human's life? Because that's going to be the military equipment for it one day.
Yeah.
Esoteric.
So going back to your story, you're saying how much you respect your dad and how influential he was in your life. I was wondering if you saw like the stuff that he taught you as growing up, if you saw any of that being taught at the academy as well.
No. No. Oh man, I'm not sure how you were an officer in the Navy, right? An officer in the Air Force. There's a guy named John Boyd. John Boyd had many theories, but one of the things that he said is in your officer career, you're either going to do something or you're going to be someone, which is a wild thought because there's so much politicking that has to happen in order to make it up the chain. As an officer, that it kind of gets muddy and gross real quick. The way my dad raised us, all three of us, is that you need to go be someone, have honor, do what needs to be done, and don't worry about the rest of it. If you do what's right, then things should take care of themselves. Should. But when I got to the academy, it was clear as day, right? That some people are willing to cut others for politics, which is a whole different thing because, this is America where all we do in America now is sports, guns, sex, and politics. But that's what I learned about how to be a person, like just an authentic, genuine person. I did not get that from the academy at all. I learned a lot about how to be more dark triad, right? Machiavellian, psychopathic, and narcissistic.
Wow.
At the academy.
That's sad. I mean, because it should be the mecca of integrity. It should be the mecca of just this is where we will do the right thing. We're all a team. This is the objective, and you do what needs to get done.
I think there's a degree of that as well. It's because you're training officers. Let's be very honest about it. The image of the honorable, go-getting, hardworking military person is a master sergeant somewhere or first sergeant who's taking care of their troops. The officer side, it just is. It's more political. That is sad. However, this is important. It is better to go to a place and learn those darker, kind of more questionable skills, and then turn around and choose to not use them, than it would be for me to never have known that they were going on and then step into an environment where I'm just oblivious, right? Yeah. I have the tool. I choose not to use the tool. I can recognize when someone else is using the tool. However, I'd rather have it, not need it, than need it, not have it.
Do you listen to Jocko Willink's podcast at all?
Oh, sometimes. I love Jocko.
I feel like he's what the military should be. Like he's none of that drama or politics. Like it's pure just discipline and getting after it.
Yeah, man. That dude, discipline is freedom. That line changed my life. Jocko was in a very unique position, right? I'm sure you've seen this as well, where the guys who are closest to the fight deal with the least amount of bullshit. While the guys who are more administrative, the office junkies, where I am right now, man, that is absolutely not what it's supposed to be. Where it's a lot of queep and politicking and, you know, like Washington, D.C. It's not, you don't necessarily, forget my political rhetoric there, but, it's not like your hands in the dirt, you know what I'm saying? You're not boots on the ground. Because when you're that close to either the people in real life or you're that close to the fight, a lot of this administrative, bureaucratic BS and politics, that doesn't matter at all.
What do you think of the theory that once shit hits the fan and things start going down, that admin and bureaucratic stuff it just goes away by itself?
Oh man, that's gonna be a shit show. I'm gonna call it what it is, and that's exactly what's gonna happen, right? And I don't think it's not classified to say this, but America's greatest weakness, militarily or anything, is the fact that we're so slow. We are slow. Should make sense, right? Because China can bust out a plane. Well, they can bust out their F-35 lookalike in 2 years, while we in the United States, who created the plane, just dropped it. I don't know. I think 5 years ago it was coming online, but we
Yeah.
started the production for the F-35 in 1985. So it took 30 years in order for us to get the plane out, and China did it in two. That should be something that is concerning, because when stuff does hit the fan and it's either move fast or die, we're going to try our best to cut all the administrative stuff out, or we're going to pay that consequence.
Yeah, and I see the argument in peacetime where you're more risk tolerant. Like, you're not going to take as many risks as you would during war, because you just don't need to necessarily. And there's always that balance. So it's definitely there's tough decisions out there being made every day.
Absolutely. But that is the thing. And that's kind of the weird part about America, right? Because technically we've only had 11 years of peace. But at the same time, are we at peace, or are we at war right now? We kind of have this weird military indigestion where we don't really know what's going on.
Yeah. And I mean, I think you could argue that's been the last, 100 years or whatever. Like, has there ever been a peacetime necessarily? Because before this, you had the Middle East and you had Vietnam, Korea. Like, it seems like there's always a conflict.
Yeah, there always is. For better or for worse. So I don't really know. I don't know the answer there, because if we're always at war, but we're also at peace, how are we actually going to be when we're at either extreme? I don't know.
Yeah. All right. Well, I want to shift it back to your story a little bit. We didn't talk about music, and I've seen you posting a lot of good music content there on Instagram.
Oh, yeah.
When did you start doing that?
Man, I kid you not, this is how this happened. I wanted to play the bass guitar because my dad told me that girls like guitar players. You go learn the guitar. And I picked that up actually after playing the bassoon in like sixth grade. Played the bassoon for 5 years. Got into guitar, bass guitar, singing and piano, and I played in several groups just like here and there, just to play. Man, I love music, because music is life. Not quite as much as dancing. Dancing is actually, I love dancing more than I love playing music, believe it or not.
Oh, you got to post some videos, man. Come on.
I could. I only do ballroom stuff though, so I need a partner.
Oh, that's
but
cool.
As soon as you post a partner, everybody assumes that you're getting married. So, which I am not anytime soon. But yeah, man. So there's something about how esoteric are you willing to go, my man?
No, let's hear it. Yeah, go
Right.
as far as you want.
So there's masculinity and there's femininity.
That's
And
hate
then-
speech.
I know. Shoot me. Um, and this is not getting it. Masculinity. I like to think of as a lot like a mountain, right? It's stable. It's consistent. It's in the same place every day. It sets boundaries. Doesn't move. Femininity is a lot like the ocean, right? It's both advancing and retreating at the same time. It is so deep we don't even understand the depth of it, and there is oftentimes a current, even if the water looks placid. Now, did not say male or female. I said masculine and feminine, right? Now, when it comes to dancing, right, particularly ballroom dancing, there's two positions. There's the lead and the follow, right? The lead, right, sets the boundaries. It keeps the times. It knows the movement and it ushers the other person. While the follow can just essentially surrender to whatever the lead is doing and it can just move about the path. And everything the follow does is beautiful because that's the entire point of being the follow, right? The mountain sets the space, the ocean fills it. In the same way, the person who is the lead sets the pace of the dance, the person to follow makes it beautiful. Those are two halves on this great dance floor that we are calling life. And that is esoteric as it can get.
Wow. When did you start dancing, and did you realize that right away to fall in love with it right away?
No. I was at the academy, actually. Because for that first 9 months when you're a 4 degree, right, you don't leave. Now you don't like that 24 square miles. You learn to explore that quite a bit because you can't leave the base for 9 months. But they would do this thing at Arnold Hall where they would do swing dancing. And you can go down there and you just, grab a partner and then you dance a little bit and you learn all these steps. And what I learned while dancing is that you can learn almost anything about the person you are dancing with simply by how they dance. And there's so many character and personality things that come through the dance that you can determine like, I like this person, we're going to be friends, or not. And we're not going to be friends. And the reasons why is essentially what we just got into. Some people are mountains and some people are oceans. And that shows up when you dance. Um, so yeah, when I did that and got to know people through dancing and learn the different steps, those are three or four things were what's consistent: the mountain, the ocean, and how you do it. And what I've learned about dancing particularly, and I think this is the most important thing, is the way that a person approaches the dance floor is the same way that they approach life. So the person who is like, all right, the music's playing, I'm going to go get a partner and I'm going out there on the floor, is the same person who's probably not averse to taking risks. The person who's going to go out, try things, fail over and over again. And the person who sits on the side and just watches other people dance is the same person sitting on the sidelines in life. So music, on top of all of that, right, is just music in a lot of ways is kind of, it sets the tone and you have no control over what happens. Just like in real life, you don't really have control over what's going to happen to you tomorrow. We can set the plans, but you never know. There could be an AI submarine that pulls up to your house tomorrow morning. We have no idea. But you always have the opportunity to dance or not dance. Leanne Womack. So
Yeah, she's great.
yeah.
I hope you dance, but
Okay.
other on that. So you said it kind of exposes a person of
Absolutely.
their risk tolerance and other factors, and I think it doesn't mean you always have to be that way. So if it's something you want to work on, you realize you're introspective. You realize like, man, I want to do these things, but I'm holding myself back. I'm letting these insecurities stop me from chasing what I really want. I think that's a great option to someone to maybe start dancing. So they get comfortable with going out of their comfort zone in one aspect of their life, and then they can see that, recognize that, and carry it forward to other areas.
Yeah. It's a very mindful thought to be able to pay attention to how you are in that moment. Absolutely.
And I think that's kind of like I listen to Jocko a lot, and that's his jujitsu is like that to him, where he gets all these other life lessons from going out and doing jujitsu every day. It's not just a workout. You know, you're having to be disciplined. You're having to interact with other people. You're having to learn. All this stuff can come from an activity you do after work. So stuff like that, I don't think should be taken lightly. Like a lot of people don't realize maybe the hours of Netflix that just accumulate every night if they're watching 2 or 3 hours every day, when they could be taking that energy and putting it towards other activities. If I'm not saying that you can't, that I'm not shaming people that watch Netflix every day, but if they want to do something and they're saying they don't have enough time or stuff like that, and then they're there watching Netflix, I think that's a good indicator of like, hey, maybe add something else in your life.
Absolutely. Do something. Go to the gym. Go dancing. I love jujitsu because jujitsu teaches you a ton about patience. Um,
Do you
but
roll
yeah,
too?
a little bit from time to time. We'll get out there. I remember I was just rolling recently with this cat named Ben. He's not a cat. He's an actual person. But Ben is, I think, a second-degree black belt, and this dude is like 240 pounds. My height. Meatball.
Oh, wow.
Right. And I don't have a white belt yet. So we're going in there. And he's doing his thing. And what I notice about the way that he rolls is he's very, like, slow. Right? And I'll get in there and try to, like, just strengthen my way into stuff but he'll just sit there and essentially just let me burn myself out until I take a breath, literally just one, and I'll move something like half an inch, and all of a sudden, like, I'll be flicked backwards. And that's there. I think there's a lot of lessons there as well, because he's absolutely right, Jocko, by saying, you do learn about patience, you learn about self-control, you learn about what it feels like to have the pressure on you and not collapse. Um, so yeah, I really do like combat sports a lot. I don't do them very often because I was in a boxing match and almost lost a tooth, but um, I do really you learn a lot about combat sports. Combat sports, as everything in life's either a fight or a dance, it's one of the two. So you're either competing or you're cooperating.
Yeah. Man, you make me want to sign up for a jiu-jitsu class and CrossFit next week.
And you would love it. You absolutely would. Especially from what I know / remember about you, you'd really like jujitsu.
What about so your music, and you're posting that and being open with it. And I know for me, one of the things I struggled with was putting out content, which is one reason I want to do this podcast, is to not let, because I think it's totally secondhanded, and it was an irrational thought of mine. It's like, oh, this isn't good enough to let the internet see, or put in the ether. But then I kind of thought like, well, this is what I'm doing. This is me, and it doesn't have to be perfect, but I'm going to put this out here. Did you have similar like hesitancy with music at all, or how does it feel to actually like put your stuff out?
I I struggle with the same thing, actually. I'm not sure if it's an element of imposter syndrome, thinking that, like, hey, I don't have a perfect voice. I'm not great at guitar. I'm not great at piano. I mean, I'm good enough, but I'm not great. Um, and there will always be someone to judge, right? But that's the same concept that we were just talking about with the dance floor. You might go out there and you look like a fool. However, what's better? Being the person who looks great and never tries, or the person who looks like a fool and does it? I think, do you follow Jordan Peterson at all?
I yeah, I know of his work. I got mixed feelings, but yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we could get into it too, but because I beside the point, he makes a point about the hero's archetype, right? Where if you watch, any story about a real heroic hero that we connect to, the hero, and this is imperative to the story, begins off as a fool. And somewhere along the journey, they master whatever it takes, in order to become the hero, right? You can look at that and like Hercules, all right, great movie. He's literally destroying everything because he's so clumsy, and then by the end, he's fighting the giants, right? Or Frodo Baggins, right? Or let's do Harry Potter. It's even better, right? Who, compared to Hermione, is not a good wizard at the end and or at the beginning, and at the end, he's dividing the Dark Lord, right? And I think particularly with posting things, you have to, and this goes for dancing, it goes for jujitsu, it goes for CrossFit, and anyone who seeks to be a master must first accept that they're going to look like a fool. And in doing so, you become the person who you need to be. Um, Jordan Peterson does have a quote on this, even though that was an Epictetus quote. Epictetus. This is Jordan Peterson's quote on this. Anything that's worth doing well is also worth doing poorly. Because as you go about the time and doing things, you will get better to some degree.
It's almost, I mean, I can see why you understand that really well, because like you had to start your weightlifting somewhere. You like doing those first push-ups were probably super difficult, and you look back at yourself then and you're a little scrawny 7-year-old. So everyone's got to start somewhere.
Everyone's got to start somewhere. Sometimes when I do post music, things of the sort, I'm doing that to get over the fact that I'm going to look silly, and just embrace it. Hey guys, I'm going to look silly today. And if you like go through some of the captions, like they're not positive, but it's out there, it's in the ether because this is me, right? And like you said, what you're doing with this podcast, man, I will cheer you on the entire way. So that's huge to be able to even step out and share your voice like this.
And thanks. And I think people should be excited when they find those things that they think are cool or exciting, but maybe that they're stumbling on or new at, and that's something that you can work on, and that should be like, oh wow, I got a lot of work to do. Let's get after it. And whereas a lot of times you get to that point and you feel embarrassed or like get down on yourself and you just stop doing it. But if it's something you really think you could care about and are excited about doing, that challenge, I feel like that's where all the money's made. And I mean, not actual money, but just in life, it's a lot more exciting to go chase after something than actually getting the reward. Like, I mean, you won the state powerlifting championship. I feel like that's the perfect example. Like, you win it and then, okay, what's next? Like, that's awesome. But like I feel like you're not resting on your laurels 10 years later.
Oh yeah. There's too much life to be lived. I'll tell you something honestly, and this is a little bit more vulnerable actually, is that after I won the state powerlifting contest, I remember coming back, and that Monday, I want to say it was the Monday night, I went into my room, I laid in my bed, and it was like the deepest depression I've ever had. Actually, right after being on the mountaintop, I won. I did it. And I laid in bed, I didn't even want to move. I didn't want to think. I was like paralyzed. And I think part of that was when I found out it wasn't fulfilling, right? It's not, I don't believe that it's as fulfilling to succeed. I think it's actually more fulfilling to strive after success. And than it is to actually be successful, if you will.
And you think that when you think that you're chasing the goal and you think that, oh, I'm going to reach that goal and it's going to be perfect. Like everything's going to be great. Right. And then you hit that. And then, like you said, you had your like kind of darkest day right there. So how do you overcome that?
To essentially shift to the next thing. Right. There's a lot that I could have done. And I think I realized that, like, after I did win state, I was like, all right, what can I do now? Because I really could have gone back into powerlifting and then just done another, bigger competitions, more, but it just seemed so unfulfilling. And I think, truthfully, now looking back at it, I think part of the reason I stayed away from powerlifting for so long, because the pain after winning was so deep. Um, but I shifted to other things like, all right, so my body's physically strong. What can I do with my mind? What can I do with my, you know, competencies, right? Who am I to become now? And am I afraid to get there? Um,
Oh,
and
that's
that's
awesome.
yeah, to some
And,
degree I am.
and so that's a good segue into so what you want to do now. Like you're talking about doing that breathe program and doing like life coaching. I was
Yes.
wondering if you could talk about that.
Yeah. So the Breathe program it's really it's born out of one, doing CrossFit, two, life experiences, and three, the lifestyle that we are living in America, right? 'Cause we are not doing great. I will say this, and I don't care who wants to say something about it. America really is sick right now. And I don't mean that in like a, mentally like you're a twisted person type of way. But I think a lot of the things that we do see in our society, whether that be, the constant bickering, the infantilization, I think the rampant sexual nature of everything, or the mass killings that happen every week, um, that is a result to some degree or next, and this may be obvious, of physical illness, mental illness, and emotional illness. So the Breathe program is takes 6 pillars to address those three things, right? Diet and exercise. Those kind of go without explanation. However, there are some things that we're doing dietarily, corporately as a country, that are not good, right? We shouldn't be eating fake food. We shouldn't be, some of the seed oils and the preservatives that we do eat are impacting our like thyroid systems that are now impacting our emotional and mental or physical, emotional and mental health. So if you can attack diet correctly, it does impact the other few, right? Physical health, you got to move. You can't be sitting at a desk all day every day. Um, those are the simple ones, right? And then sleep and sunlight, right? So sleep, naturally, that's going to play a lot into your physical health. But there's a reason that your mental clarity and the amount of hormones in your body changes based upon how much sleep you get. The big one, and this is one I stick with all the time, is particularly in men, right? So us, so we're approaching 30 pretty quick.
Yeah.
Uh, what happens to what's the tie between sleep and testosterone? Because people say when you're at 30, like your testosterone just drops off. And
Yeah.
I don't actually hold that to be true. I think your lifestyle changes when you're 30, when you start having kids, when you start taking on more responsibilities at work, when you have more resources to do more things, and that's taking a cost on your sleep. That's what ends up, dropping your testosterone. Naturally, it's going to decrease a little bit, but it shouldn't be at a position where it is now, where many men in our society have less testosterone at 32 than most girls do at 8.
Wow.
That's a problem.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And the best way for men, particularly, to get their T count up quickly is to just go get sleep. You need to be sleeping 6 to 8 hours a day. So, and there are different things that you can be doing to mitigate sleep. Like when you eat is very important to how you sleep. And that's amongst other things that we cover in the Breathe program. So, diet, exercise, sleep, sunlight, right? How does your body react to nature? How is, because sunlight does trigger a lot of the different sensors and reactions that our body does naturally when we are in the sun versus when we are in artificial light. So it's imperative to go out and get sunlight. Go be outside in nature. Go explore something. Find, because sunlight means more than literally standing in the sun. It is the embrace with nature, whether that be on the beach, in the mountain, in the woods, whatever, and one's drive for novelty. What have you done recently that is new? What is there that's a challenge? Or have you gone someplace or tried something that you haven't before?
Do
Um,
you do you value like the morning sun more than later in the day? Or I hear a lot of people saying like first thing in the morning, it's good to get out and get some sunlight.
You absolutely should go outside and get some sunlight early in the day if possible, because the photosensors in your eyes will tell you to wake up, right? And that has a lot to do with the way that our minds have evolved over the course of time, is that we will react naturally to blue light. That will keep you awake or make you wake up more quickly. So when you go outside, particularly in the morning, because of the wavelength, when you see evening, morning time, it's usually the blue light gets. That's not totally true. I don't know how to say this. You get all of the light, all the spectrum of light during the regular time of the day.
Mm-hmm.
Because of the angle that the sun is approaching over the horizon, you see more red light in the morning and the evening. And red light is actually better for your body in terms of recovery and preparation for sleep. When you wake up in the morning, right, you get that natural transition from this is my sleeping light to this is my waking light. So it's a natural form of stimulating your body so you're ready for the day in the morning. However, conversely, if you go see the sunset, you're going to sleep better.
Okay. What about, have you seen those red light therapy things you can hang on your wall or on the door? And is that a good substitute?
I have mixed opinions on that one. So it will give you the impact that you're looking for. But like anything that's unnatural, it may not be giving you the amount that your body naturally will get.
Mm-hmm.
You know, as human beings, we should be outside at least an hour a day, minimum. Now, given most of us don't do that, which is saying a lot. But, you can fast track that by getting a red light and putting it on. You may burn a little bit, or you may not get enough, depending on how much time you use. But there's something about the density and the intensity of the red light on the human body, which is so intense, you're more likely to either overshoot how much you need or undershoot it, as opposed to just taking an hour or so outside, which is a lot more even, so you can get a better, more granular accuracy of the amount of light that your body needs. That
Yeah, it makes sense. And I also want to hear your take. I don't like using sunscreen. So like if I know I'll get burnt, I'll just wear, maybe like a hat and long sleeves. I'd rather do that than put on a ton of sunscreen. And I found that if I get more sun gradually, eventually I just I can stay in the sun longer.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on sunscreen?
I don't like sunscreen because it's not natural. I'm very much a nature boy, like through and through. Sunscreen, it's kind of like seed oils, right? It has a lot of chemicals and additives to protect your skin. And I don't necessarily think that is natural. And because it's not natural, I don't see it as something that is a viable long-term solution. Because how much, if you just said it honestly, if it was anything else, how many chemicals are you willing to rub on your body every single day? And how healthy do you think that's honestly making you?
I think that's a big reason why so many people are getting sick nowadays so easily, and maybe even allergies and all this stuff where you're rubbing all this Purell on themselves, all this lotion that just strips away all your natural bacteria. And
Right.
I think that could definitely be a reason why we're getting more sick. I don't have studies to prove it, but I err on the side of caution there.
Yeah. Anecdotally, let me give you one, right? I have a grandma. My grandma will be 80.
Nice.
Yeah. 80 years old. She lives on the island of Antigua. Doesn't go to see doctors. Doesn't use sunscreen. Doesn't even use sunglasses. Every day she carries buckets, like 5-gallon buckets of rocks up and down hills at 80 years old.
Wow.
I'm immediately asking questions. What is it about her that she's doing that is working without doctors, without, medication, without sunscreen, that the 26-year-old who's in the cubicle next to me needs help because he's falling apart. That's inconsistent. Um, and a lot of that comes down to those chemicals we're using. And a lot of that comes to our lifestyle and diet. Speaking of, have you ever heard of how seed oils are made?
It's like machine oil, right? Like,
Yeah. So if you use grapeseed oil, that's essentially the same oil you're putting in your car.
jeez.
But what it is they take like oils, like they squeeze it all together. They rinse the cake, because it's a cake now, with a dye and essentially bleach. Run that through another chemical to get rid of the color. Run it through another chemical because it doesn't work the first time. And then after that, it stinks, so they run another chemical through it so that it doesn't smell bad. And then, after all 5, 6, 7 of those treatments and things, you eat it. Hard
And
pass.
I think, yeah, it's a great point too of when we started really using seed oil. Like McDonald's used to use like tallow or lard or something to fry their French fries, and now
Mhm.
everyone uses seed oils, and they're a lot cheaper. But at what cost? Like these things, I think we've seen it causes a ton of inflammation at the least,
Mhm.
and who knows what other consequences it has. I've heard of maybe that being a reason people get sunburnt so easily is they're eating all these seed oil foods. But
Mhm.
yeah, I don't think there's anything good about seed oils.
The It's not good, and there's a lot of chemicals there. I would always refer back to what would we do if we had none of this extra stuff. All right, we would be eating animals, uh, controversial as that is, right? Because get in their natural fats, which are already processed. Our bodies break those down very naturally. And you'd be eating fatty foods, avocados, olives, nuts, right? Those oils are actually very good for the body. Coconuts is fantastic. Um, and we'd be healthier.
Have
But
you heard of the whole basis behind like the standard American diet and why we shifted to like all this grain heavy stuff and against animal products? Have you heard of like the Seventh Day Adventists and not wanting people like Owen Kellogg? That story
ooh,
is crazy.
could you share it?
Well, I'm probably going to mess it up, but the basis is I'll get names mixed up, but I think it was Owen Kellogg was a big Seventh Day Adventist, and somebody got a premonition in the Seventh Day Adventists that they shouldn't eat meat, shouldn't eat animal products. So that's why Kellogg's wanted to create the grains, the cereal products, and also I think they also didn't like people uh, like having sexual desire. Like they didn't want people having sex or like masturbating and stuff. And so that's their whole diet. They wanted grain heavy and to try to promote their religious beliefs. And so that was like Owen Kellogg's big reason for making all these cereals and stuff. And then how it got entwined with the government, I'm not exactly sure. But ultimately, there's like the McGovern committee, and they were trying to decide like, oh, I think it was after President Eisenhower had a heart attack. And I'm like, oh, why do you have a heart attack? And ultimately, they decided it was based on meat and cholesterol. And so that's why they pushed like all this grain heavy seed oil, get rid of saturated fat type mindset on the people.
Wow, that sounds like it kind of makes sense. But I would take that. That makes perfect sense, but that would also make me think the Kellogg's probably had a wheat farm somewhere, or like really close farms with somebody who was a farmer.
Oh yeah, I mean they were the biggest like grain sales
That,
company, all the cereal, all that. Like I'm sure.
that that's it, right? Hey, I don't mean to get religious on you because we already touched on this just a second ago, but this is a belief I hold to be true, and I know I'm gonna pay for this one day for saying it out loud, but I'm gonna say it. America serves one God, and that God is money, right? And hey, the profits are the The rich and the poor are the sinners, and that's just the way that it is. If we were to take anything down this logical path, somehow it ties back to how can we make the money. If you own the grain field, yes, you're going to spin the story that says, "Oh, just buy grains, stop eating meat." Even though we know at this point in 2023, like it's healthy, you're not going to get there's no natural way to get the vitamins and minerals that you need without eating meat or taking subs.
And I agree with you in that money is a huge influence, and that's one reason I might send you some Bitcoin stuff. One of the Bitcoiners, one of the motto is "fix the money, fix the world," and the fact that because the government is force, and the fact that the government has all this say, and we don't let just the market react, because the market will ultimately, if you're selling a bad product or is having all these bad consequences, the market will work itself out where people will say, "Hey, we want something better." But when you have the government in there telling people like, "Oh no, this is the safe thing to do. This is what you need to eat. We're going to subsidize corn or whatever. Like you guys need to eat more corn." That's when stuff gets really hairy. And like you said, all these financial incentives are intertwined with force, which is the government and economics. And I think ideally I would love to be in a system that separates the two and that you don't even have to question that bias, because having that bias is really unjust.
Yeah. They couldn't have said it any better. The fact that we do have those things, finances plus force somehow ends up with a food bar, right? And it doesn't work. It doesn't work, point blank, period. I've not seen any sort of government intervention, economically speaking, that has actually done long-term good.
Yeah.
But the free market, I don't even necessarily say capitalism, because capitalism has its own like ups and downs as well. But I do believe the free market economics, would have led itself to a better and healthier. Because hey, if we were to say, "Hey, everybody, if you go eat red meat, it's going to be better for you because our bodies do process that relatively well," and then you'd have healthier people that who doesn't like steak, besides vegans.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, how can people? Because I'm on board of this Breathe program. How can people learn more about it or reach out to you if they want to talk to you?
Oh, for sure. I have a Facebook group, and we're making daily posts. Every day we post something that is to the Breathe program. It corresponds to one of the 6 tenets. And I will be doing online coaching, one-on-ones. If anybody wants to talk to me about how to set up a one-for-one, we're happily to do that. You're more than welcome to schedule a call. The program itself, as it stands, is an 8-week program that lays out all of the habits that a person can use in order to develop that lifestyle that is healthier for them. I also do customized workout routines. Naturally, is the Facebook group. And I'm in the process of developing essentially a collection of videos that outline why these things work and how you can implement them in their day-to-day lives. But
That's awesome. I'll have a link to that in the show notes so people can just click and get in touch with you. But yeah, I think it's super beneficial program. And if people are wanting to take a step in the right direction and get a healthier life, it's great to have someone there coaching you and assisting you and showing you a solid path. And I think you're doing a great job there.
thank you. Best I can do.
All right. Well, Collin, we've gone just over an hour and a half. It's been a pleasure. Is there any last takeaways on this episode? Hopefully we'll do some more of these because I think we got a lot to talk about.
Oh, yeah. I want to definitely hear your take on religion, but that might be another conversation.
Oh, well, I'm not religious. If that's a teaser. I don't know. But yeah, we could have a whole episode on religion, a little debate or something.
I'm not sure if it'd be a debate. Like, I don't mean to extend this by any means, because I used to be in high school, was like the Bible thumper. Um, but now let's put it like this, I see things differently. Let's put it that way. And not nearly as dogmatic. I'm what I refer to as an anti-church Christian. Oh, well,
Yeah. Next time?
next time.
Yeah, next time. All right. Sounds good, Colin. Well, thank you so much for taking your time and taking time out of the day to join the podcast, and look forward to the next one.
Hey, thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
See ya.
Thank you for listening to the Mike White Podcast. Be sure to follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Mike White Pod, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Y'all have a great day.